Welcome. Welcome to everyone for joining this. It's our last of the year webinar. We love doing these at this time of the year. My name is Graham Crawshaw, the Procurement Content Director at CASME, the global procurement community, and delighted to be here with a very special panel where we're going to talk about preparing for tomorrow. So I think we should start with some introductions and then we'll get on to the conversation. Just to say, we are recording this, and that recording will be made available to you. I know it's a question that people do like to ask. So I think we should probably go for the furthest away first. So Terry, I think that makes your first to kick off today. Welcome.
Thank you. I am thrilled to be here. So thank you for having me as a panelist. My name is Terry Ruskowski. I work for Intel Corporation. I have been there for 30 years, and the majority of my career has been in the supply chain function. I worked for a long period of time on the direct side, buying equipment, selling equipment. Now, recently, I'm in the indirect side, doing facilities, construction, and real estate. And I'm in Phoenix, Arizona. So thank you for having me.
Excellent. Thank you, Terry. So following my logic on the geographic sequence, that makes you next meter.
Sure. So hello to everyone. Really pleased to be here today, just before the holidays. Amita Gupta. I have spent 25 plus years in the procurement and supply chain space, largely focused on starting up and building B2B businesses across services and technology. And most recently, I lead WNS Procurement. So I'll be taking a little bit more of a service provider view as we go through this discussion.
Fantastic, Mita. Thank you. And closest, but still a little distance away, Alejandra, welcome to you.
Thank you. And I'm excited to be here today. I'm Alejandra Garcia. I'm currently Flint's Chief Procurement Officer, and I've done my career in more than 25 years, mostly in FMCGs, but recently also in pharma and nowadays in chemicals. I would define myself as a business leader with a passion for procurement. And I'm really passionate about the transformation of our function, the strategy, and the outmost the collaboration and partnership. And I'm excited to be here with all of you and exchange on what has been 2024 and what to expect on next year.
Excellent. Thank you. Right. Let's lose the slide so we can then all see each other. A final reminder, we're recording this. The recording will be made available. We've also got the Q&A box. We sometimes struggle to get them all in, but if you've any questions, please put them in there. If we can't address them during this hour, then we will see what we could do in terms of getting a response. But it's always good to have some questions and we'll try and slot them in. There'll be some polls later as well to make it as interactive as possible. My goodness, what a year it has been. We really have had a fascinating 2024. And what we want to do is we're going to tease out some of the issues. But there's been so much going on. I think when we met and had this same webinar last year, we were hoping for a nice, calm 2024, following all the turbulence that we'd had in the previous years. But it just seems that it's shifted, that we've had other challenges, and we're going to talk through some of those, some of the pressures. So whether it's been regulatory, geopolitical, my goodness, it has been a very busy year. Then when we've done that, we're going to look at some of the challenges that procurement now faces, and then it'll be time to get the crystal ball out and to really see what we anticipate for 2025. Do we have the answers for you? No. But do we have something that hopefully will be very thought-provoking, and you will then be able to align to the thinking that you are doing as you've done your own planning for 2025, and it will be really fascinating to see if what we're saying resonates with that. That's the plan. Let's start with that first question and understanding what have we learned from 2024. So I'm going to build as we go around the panel. Terry, do you want to kick off on that one? What would you say? What have you learned from 2024?
Yeah, So if any of you keep up with what's happening at Intel, we are in a very difficult situation. The only thing that has been constant for us has been change. You probably heard about 15,000 people laid off. Our CEO just retired, and we are struggling as a company. So for us, we've lost a lot of people. That has caused some turbulence in our supply chain. As our suppliers read, and anybody can read the information, it's public knowledge. How much of it is true is to be determined. But at any rate, as suppliers read the information, as we read the information, we are trying to figure out how we can continue forward in the most cost-effective and efficient way. This change, as I said, has caused a lot of turbulence in us trying to figure out what is the best way to manage the supply chain moving forward. Again, how can we become cost effective? Do we consolidate? Do we diversify with our supply base? A lot of different factors that we're trying to consider. And then how do you build that resilient workforce? How do you keep people focused on what needs to happen as opposed to worrying about what is? So I think for us, again, coming from our perspective, we've dealt with a lot of uncertainty, a lot of change that we're going to have to adapt and be flexible with, and really, really focus on execution and cost cutting as we move forward into 2025.
Thank you. I am sure a lot of people listening to this will resonate exactly with what you're saying. The pressure is on. Procurement is under that pressure. And you've just explained it so well that it really does sort of bring home the message and also the importance of what you've actually got to work on and focus on. Alejandra, what is your situation? What does your 2024 look like?
Yeah, very similar to what Terry just shared, right? So on one hand, we have this balance between being cost effective, and the pressure on cost is back, definitely, but also to keep the right focus on the long-term commitments, either in terms of sustainability, innovation, technology, but also as the regulation shifts and changes in many geographies, we need to adapt to that new reality. But also that comes to building and continue with the resilience, either in our teams, but also in our supply chains. And I think these years, there's an evident proof that is through robust supplier networks that we can be able to navigate, on one hand, the uncertainty, the tensions, but also the economical shifts that we're seeing in the market. Now, certain procurement targets or KPIs are, falling between the cracks. And I think this is a big shift from the first half of the year to the second half of the year. And as procurement leaders, we need to be smart enough to keep them in the agenda, to get them in the strategy, but also being able to deliver and to commit to the customers, to our vendors, and to our business to deliver on what is priority for them, and also prepare our teams and our organization for next year.
Okay, excellent. Good. Thank you. Mita, what are you seeing? Because obviously you work with many organizations. Do you see very similar patterns emerging?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to be contrarian and say, oh, we're seeing something completely different. But the reality is, as Terry said, and as Alejandra is saying, what we're seeing across organizations, there are two really key things. One is this notion of agility and resilience. And when we hear these words, they sound very buzzwordy. What does that really mean? And my view is, since 2020, really, that's when we've all learned what does resilience really mean in terms of having dependable supply chains, being able to pivot on a dime, if you will, having the right talent, having the right infrastructure, having the right data systems to be able to rely on in order to pivot strategy, in order to be able to consolidate supply base or diversify supply base when and where needed. And as we saw in 2024, as you mentioned, Graham, whether it's geopolitical tensions, outright wars, climate change events, economic instability, these, in my view, these elements, a combination of them, are going to continue through the decade. if not beyond. And so the way Terry started out, the only thing we can depend on is change. So building those resilient function, it's not just procurement. It is really any function enterprise-wide that we're seeing needs to build that agility, being able to pivot quickly, being able to move quickly, being able to make data-driven decisions on dependable data. And so that brings me to what we're certainly seeing through 2024, probably started more in the last couple of years. And I think there's going to be an acceleration of that as we go through the rest of this decade and beyond, is this notion of technology. And what does that mean? Digital transformation, again, another buzzword. But in my view, what that means is the ability to identify tools or enabling tools that can work within your strategic workflows of procurement, whether that means spend analytics, whether that means sourcing, contract management, and so on and so forth. And also that in Gen AI, I haven't mentioned it because that is just the word, but I and we across our clients do believe Gen AI plays a part. Gen AI doesn't mean that it is taking over the world and it's taking over everybody's job, but rather how is it working in this equation of what we call AI plus HI? So artificial intelligence plus the human intelligence, and leveraging these technologies as a co-pilot. So starting with things like automation, which already exists, whether RPA or hyper automation, which is kind of combining the RPA of the world and AI, and then Gen AI. But that human in the loop is still key. And I think, to me, that's a lesson that we've seen across our clients, that we have learned in our own development of digital enabling tools, and that is going to continue into 2025 and beyond to help every organization that we work with to develop this resiliency and to develop the efficiencies or build upon the efficiencies, and accelerate those efficiencies, I should say.
Excellent. Thank you. Right. Time for a first poll, because I'm fascinating by all that you're saying, sort of, Mita, but I'm keen to understand, and let's look at sort of Gen AI specifically. There has been so much hype this year. That should be almost top of the list of conversations. Let's find out the reality. So, Tara, if you'd run the poll on AI adoption in procurement, please. I'd like to gauge the view of everyone on the call today as to your current status. So has your organization invested in AI tools to support procurement activities? And we've got some options here. So you can only select one, but hopefully that's pretty obvious. Yes, you've invested and implemented. Yes, you've invested and are about to implement. No, but you're going to start investing. No, but you're preparing a business case and expect to invest in the first quarter of 2025. No, but begin investing at some point in 2025, or you're not even considering it until 2026. So that should give us a really good idea as to what the sort of the feel of this technology is, and how people are embracing it. And I've got a couple of comments to share, but I want to get the data from you all first of all. So I think give you a few more seconds. It's not too difficult. You only got to select the one. So let's do that, and then get a view of that. In the interest of time, let's end the poll there and share the results. Thank you, Tara. Is everyone seeing the results? There we go. So, yes, have invested and implemented about, 30%. The no's have also got quite a high, and I think that's, without getting hung up in the detail, I think that's almost what I would expect. At CASME, we did benchmarking last month, and it really did highlight that, there's a lot of hype, there's a lot of nervousness, but we almost have to do something. So whether it is experiment or learn, you just can't ignore it. It's not going to go away. So there's the results. Terry, any observations? What's the situation like? I mean, Intel, you're producing all the chips. What's your view on actually using AI within procurement?
Yeah. In my specific world, we don't use it. We haven't made the investment probably because the investments probably are being made on predicting, I would imagine, our forecast for chips. Now, that being said, would I love to know, be able to predict my forecast for my business and be able to manage my supply base much better? Absolutely. I just think that given the situation, the investment isn't going to be made, particularly in my world, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you for your honesty. I'm going to jump to Mita. Do you agree that is investment a bottleneck for companies?
Well, I think there are probably multiple things. One is certainly investment. It's creating the business case for it. I mean, there's smaller things, an enterprise license for ChatGPT, for example. That's smaller. But then the next step there is having a training program, how to use it, what to use it for, so that it's truly driving efficiency, as I was talking about in what we would call sort of the strategic workflows, right? And I think the third area is, well, there are two more items there related to Gen AI. So it's having the data then also, if you are leveraging specific tools, whether it's a sourcing tool that drives autonomous sourcing for you, or you're leveraging, I mean, certain tools that can help to provide insights and recommendations based on market intelligence, right? It's doing that intelligence research for you, if you will, and then developing insights. Still, the human is at the wheel, but then having the right data, internal and external. That's what all of this is based on. So it's that data availability, the data structure, and then the last thing is ensuring that you guys have all heard about hallucinations, that it's all working properly, that there is integrity in that data. So I think there are a couple bottlenecks or challenges that still exist that can be worked through, absolutely. But it does take a bit of a structured program in order to do it enterprise-wide, and especially at a company like Intel, the size and scale of that, it has to be done properly to drive the efficiencies and savings that that Terry would be looking for.
May I add, I'm sorry, we tried early on in the beginning of the year to do an AI initiative. What we found though is unless you're willing to invest the resources, we found it's much easier to pay somebody to go out and do all the scans of the market data. So it was an interesting exercise for us to understand. It's complex, right? You have to have dedicated people that are willing to go source all the information, compile it into something meaningful so that users can actually make something meaningful out of it. But again, I think that investment is something, as you mentioned, Mita, has to be committed by the company, and you have to make sure that you've got the right resources in place that have both, the time and the willingness to make that a reality.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Alejandra, yeah.
I would like to add something here, and I believe it's important to bring one distinction, right? One thing is the expectation from the stakeholders, and this is where the stakeholder engagement and management is key. Because if you talk to CFOs, as I do almost every day, when we talk about AI, the first question I get is how many people we will be able to reduce in our headcount. And that's not the point. So on one hand, with the stakeholders like the CFOs, CITOs, etc., the discussion is the investment and the return, almost always in terms of headcount. However, from what I hear here in the panel and also my experience and with other colleagues, is more about how I can use this tool to augment the potential of my team. And then the question is what exactly I want to augment, right? The potential to run more RFPs, to develop more suppliers, to onboard more suppliers, to have much better data. And it's critical, the training, as Mita just mentioned, right? So on one hand, we have the investment of the tool, of the technology, but we also need to train the people to ask the right questions and to do something meaningful with the answers. And this is where many companies have struggled to figure this out, while on the other hand, you have the pressure from the stakeholders saying, okay, now you have this license for whatever fancy name. When do I get the redundancies? So we need to find a way to reconcile these polarities, if we say it in a nice way, right? And for me, it's about managing the stakeholders' expectations, but also the time frame. And also what we need our team to make with these tools, right? It's not that we will get rid of all the buyers. I do believe this will augment the buyer's capacity or capability to run certain processes, while on the other hand, we don't want to do that. We want to keep the engagement with the stakeholders, the conversations, the one-on-ones going, not going through a robot. And I think it's a very rich discussion that maybe were to have a different panel. But this distinction for me is very important, the expectations from the stakeholders and the reality that we're facing in the implementation of the tools.
And I would add, unfortunately, I mean, I've had conversations recently where teams have been cut in anticipation of systems that have been invested in delivering sort of value as you described. So we've got to be really careful not to almost shoot ourselves in the foot and sort of really say, look, we can't reduce people. We need the people now, and we then need the teams. Mita, I think you were going to make a point.
Yeah, and not to belabor this, but I very much agree with what you're saying, Alejandra, that it is not about replacing people. Now, if we think about the spectrum of, let's just call it that source to pay process, and there are many elements that are in it, as we go to downstream, very repetitive, very transactional tasks, sure, they can be automated. There's still an element, if I talk about this AI plus HI equation, and maybe 80% of it is AI or automation, 20% is HI. And as we move up the value chain, you're flipping that equation, in my view, completely. And so it's about how do we automate those tasks that truly can be automated and move our people to drive more value, to drive more strategic projects. And that's the business case. So when we say, hey, we're driving more value, it could be in third-party cost savings. It could be, there is going to be some OpEx optimization. There is more value in managing risk, managing compliance, driving stakeholder relationships. And I think we as a procurement function, it's about how we present that business case. It's not just a headcount play. And I can say it, many clients we speak with and work with, that is the equation that we're presenting, that this AI, Gen AI in particular, is a co-pilot. It is helping everybody, me, Alejandra, Terry, our teams, do their jobs more efficiently so they can get to more spend, get to more stakeholders, get to more intelligence so that they can drive negotiations in a better way and drive, optimal savings. So that's what we're seeing. And to your point, Alejandra, I think that whether it's the CFO or anybody else, that comes out in the education through the business case. And hopefully, Graham, it's also preempting making changes before a strategy is even implemented.
Absolutely, yes. Okay, great. Let's move on to the second point, which is the overall challenges that procurement face at the moment. Terry, over to you. I'd like an update. What are you seeing? I've got to mention ESG, and I know it's very controversial at the moment. And I also know Intel are very advanced in terms of ESG. What are you seeing the challenges around that for you and your organization?
ESG, again, as you mentioned, Graham, we have a whole group focused on that. So they support us in that function. So I don't necessarily have to worry about that.
That's good.
Because, and that function may have, in fact, lost some headcount, but we're still very committed. So Intel, as you know, is a company that is always going to have a focus on, ESG initiatives and ensuring that we aren't doing business with suppliers who are obviously doing anything that are some sort of wrongdoing. A lot of focus on diverse suppliers. All of that is still very critical in Intel's supply chain.
Excellent. Good. Thank you.
Has not been deprioritized by any means. Yeah.
Which is good to hear, because I know, again, there's a fear that it might be. And depending where you are, yeah, definitely there's that threat. But you're shaking your head, so it's definitely not applicable at Intel. I'm going to do a poll. Let's do the second poll to again get your views on ESG. So I'll ask Tara to launch that one, and we'll get your views, and then I'll go to Alejandra to get hers. So ESG. Let's have a look. So this is a multiple choice, and there are a number of options here. So you'll probably beat me at reading them out. But what is procurement's roles and responsibilities within environmental, social, and governance? Please select all apply. So are you about being a business advisor? Is it about collaboration with different teams? Is it about developing ethical and social procurement frameworks? Is it about working and collaborating with suppliers? Identifying the opportunities to improve sustainability? Is it about integrating ESG within category management? Are you supposed to be leading sustainability initiatives? Is it about performing supply due diligence and risk management? Sourcing and contracting suppliers that align with your goals, or supporting the stakeholder in achieving their ESG objectives? We have deliberately chosen those options, having spent a lot of time talking about ESG. So by definition, those are what procurement is working on at the moment. What I'd like you to respond is almost, let's refine and understand some of the priorities as you see them now. So just give a few more seconds, and then we can end the poll. So yeah, you can answer all that apply. In the interest of time, I'm going to end the poll there, and let's share the results. This time you can't look at the percentages because you've answered more. So let's just look at the length of the bars. Collaboration. Clearly, number one there, collaboration with corporate teams. So teams that are doing the work, which is also very helpful, engaging and collaborating with suppliers. So I'm almost quite keen that, or pleased to see that whole emphasis on collaboration, working with your stakeholders, working with your suppliers. Alejandra, any observation whilst that remains on the screen, and how are you involved with ESG as we end the year?
Yeah, thank you. And to be honest, I'm not surprised by the answers, because in many companies, we are involved in everything, right? In the end-to-end, from setting what is the target, what is the baseline, what will be the different initiatives, how we engage with the suppliers, how we include sustainability and ESG into the RFPs and supplier qualification, but also when innovation or R&D wants to develop a new product and we're out there scouting for new technologies, for new molecules, for new raw materials, all of that should include ESG. What I believe that in 2025, the tension between the short term, because of the uncertainty that we're facing already in the market, and the long-term work, and ESG falls in that bucket, we will need to find the right balance, right? Because our teams cannot do everything at the same time. Some organizations may have the luxury to have dedicated sustainability teams. In many organizations, it's not the case. It's a category manager that is doing everything, including ESG and other sustainability targets. So as leaders, we will need to find a way to find the right priorities, the right balance, so they can, of course, deliver and secure the supply in the short term and our financial performance, while also building the different blocks that are necessary to achieve the targets in the long term.
Thank you. Beta, anything to add under ESG?
A large umbrella topic.
It is, isn't it?
And if we think about procurement and conversations that we have with our clients, the two areas specifically that come to mind, and there are many, of course, but one is supplier diversity, right? The diversity of the supply base and how it's measured in the US, for example. There are certain organizations here that measure it, and how Europe works, and APAC's kind of a different ballgame when it comes to measuring that. But supplier diversity has been around for a long time, and I think that it is a key program for many enterprises in different verticals. The other area that we see more inquiries and then requests for support on is how to, especially on the indirect spend side, is how to measure the scope 3, the scope 3 carbon emissions, right? And setting up programs and way to measure that data. And so I think that, yes, there has been a cyclicality, or there has been different waves of the importance and focus on this overall umbrella of ESG. And I think I can say transparently, and I'm based here in the States, Terry, you as well, and we have a new administration that is, so I think there are policies and there are, there are going to be different ways of working, perhaps, and as we move forward for some US-based companies, because there has been a shift. So, for example, in DEI programs, there are companies that have announced that they are no longer investing or kind of doing away with the emphasis on DEI programs, and that then bleeds into the way that the company's operating and into the procurement objectives as well. That said, overall, we've also done a survey earlier this year, which shows that chief procurement officers, procurement organizations are absolutely still thinking about sustainability. And my view on it is it's still related to supplier diversity, and then lesser so, it's the measurement of these carbon scope 3 emissions.
Yeah, excellent. Good, thank you. Anything else in terms of current challenges? Terry, I know you had, what you say that procurement generally is, before we look at the future, what are any further challenges you'd like to share with everyone?
Yeah, and again, given our situation and the fact that right now we are actually reducing our portfolio, so our suppliers aren't picking up new business, which has been difficult for them. We are closing down a lot of our sites, and obviously that means we don't need as many services at that site. So what's a big challenge for us is, how do we keep our suppliers engaged and motivated? How do we instill that confidence moving forward? Because they've said to me, look, I'm losing this scope. That means I'm losing headcount. And we obviously need to grow as a company. So how do I look for opportunities? And that's been my real challenges that exist. So maybe taking scope that we're doing internally and outsourcing that to our suppliers. So for us, that's a really big challenge. We used to be the company all suppliers wanted to do business with. And I hope we still are. But the situation has changed greatly for them. And I think they're looking at this now and going, okay, how am I going to stay profitable? How do I explain this to my headcount? How am I going to grow my business, et cetera? So we've got a lot of challenges, in my opinion, that we're going to need to face with our supply base as we go through this downturn, if you will, these difficult times, again, to ensure that confidence in us as a customer to them.
So if anything, you want to be working closer with suppliers.
Yes.
And it's interesting that sort of, yes, it's obviously easier when things are on the up and up and doing well, but actually you know who really is committed to your business when they help you and support you through the tougher times.
That's right. And there have been those tough questions we've given to our suppliers to, do different types of initiatives to support. And you're absolutely right, Graham. It's interesting. The ones that I have found, the ones you think will help you are generally not the ones, it's the other ones. So it's very interesting to watch it. And again, back to, we all win together, right? And I get it. They have to make money. We have to do the same. So, yeah, it's been a very, very interesting situation, and we definitely feel our suppliers are an integral part of our success. So working together through this and figuring out how we meet those challenges is critical for our 2025.
Wow, I can certainly see that's testing your skills, because almost you need a different skill set when working under that different types of pressure. And I'm sure there are many listening that can relate to that as well. Excellent. Mita.
I might just build upon that. Was speaking with another client recently, and Terry, it's not a dissimilar story to what you're saying. They're in a different industry, but for them, it was also about getting back to the basics. as you said, leaning out the portfolio and working with supply. I mean, that was this particular CPO and her team were spending probably 80% of their time talking to their strategic suppliers and even the tier 2 suppliers on exactly these conversations, because it is a long view. It is a long view that has to be taken. They're good years and they're bad years. And so, you know, Graham, to your question where you're talking about what are other challenges, one thing I had on my list was finding the right talent or enabling the current talent to ensure that they have those right skills of how to evaluate a longer term view, ensuring that they have the right intelligence and data to be able to negotiate what those longer term views can look like. Like 2025 may be a tougher year. This is what we see in 26, 27. And kind of building on that talent and going back to some of the things I was saying before, as I think about 2025 and beyond, it's not just the typical procurement skills of supplier management, negotiation, sourcing, and so forth, but I also do believe it's data analytics, and it is technical skills, technology skills, not only data, but also then how to leverage digital enablers to drive efficiencies into the process.
Excellent, good, thank you. Let's now move forwards. Let's look at 2025 and beyond, having covered the almost where we're up to now. I think now's the time. Let's get that crystal ball out. Let's have our third poll, please, Tara, because again, before we speak, let's get the view of everyone on the call today. There's no better way to get some immediate benchmarking. So the last panel for today, what are the key challenges? Let's see how many we agree on. You can select the top 3. So we're going to put a bit of pressure on because you could tick all of these, but I really want you to think through. So the top 3 hot topics. So is it balancing cost with ESG objectives? Is it that business continuity that we've been talking about? Managing risk, managing margin for those of you that work very closely with sales? Is it still dealing with inflation? And that hasn't gone away. That's still there for cost areas like labour, certain commodities. Is it about cost in general? Are you under so much pressure from your CFO that the whole focus is on cost? Business resilience, is that done? Is that still a challenge for you? Supply continuity, geopolitics, labour shortages, and that's labour shortages within procurement, or identifying new sources of value and that whole innovation piece. So all of these topics are pretty warm, if not hot, and you're all working on them. But we want to really tease out what are those top 3 that you're really going to be under immense pressure after the holidays in the new year to work on. So hopefully give you time to actually work out your top 3, and we'll take a look at that. So no, there's not going to be any prizes for what we think is the number 1. Let's put everyone out there misery. Tara, end the poll and share the results, please. Look at that. You can't use the percentages because you've answered 3, but cost way out there in terms of the pressure, followed by business continuity, and then really followed by, if I do my calculation right, the balance of cost and ESG. So I think regardless of your company's position, your profitability, the challenges, it just seems that pressure on cost is absolutely massive. And that's already been a theme from what we've been hearing about. Observations on this, Alejandra, let you go first, and we'll stop sharing. Let you go first on those observations.
Thank you, Graham. And again, I'm not surprised. And I think it's absolutely right to see that the future, and it's already our present, will be how do we impact the P&L? Either it's through COGS, through margin, through business continuity, through supply security, through risk. All of that will have a contribution to P&L. And this is where procurement directly impacts P&L for the good or the bad, right? Also, we have several geopolitical tensions that we already know. And as history predicts, there will be new coming up in next year. But also we have new regulation coming, especially in Europe, or for those companies that have operation in Europe, right? And is your license to operate. So on one hand, we want to drive more value. We want to do more innovation with suppliers. We want to do more ESG, but we have a commitment to deliver on the P&L. But also we need to navigate these tensions and the changes in the regulation to be able to keep our business going. So it's an interesting conversation to have with the stakeholders, and I would invite everybody to have your one-on-ones with your key stakeholders to align on what will be the true priorities for the business, how this translates into procurement, because we would love to do everything, but we cannot do everything not at the same time, right? And also how we're going to communicate a clear vision, a clear understanding of the situation to our teams, give clarity of what is expected, and develop the skills, if you haven't done it, for the teams to be agile, resilient, adaptable, and have this entrepreneurial mindset, right? We need to go beyond just the pure cost savings to reduce the waste in our supply chain. And this is a change in the mindset, and our teams need to be ready, the people need to be ready to grasp these opportunities and drive them forward. And that for me would be the challenge in 2025, at least from what we know right now. But things are changing almost every other week, and we need to be quick to adapt, to react, use data and technology to reach quickly into conclusions and activate and execute brilliantly.
Excellent. So the pace of work, the rate of change is accelerating from what you're describing.
Yes, indeed, this is what I'm seeing. And unfortunately, not everybody is ready for that, but this is where technology can enhance and can support massively, right? To create, to digest information, to digest data, to get insights, and then we can execute. So the speed is going faster and faster, because also the world is changing faster and faster with AI, technology, AR, all of this. And we need to help our teams to accommodate to that new reality.
Excellent. So, Mita, it's a clear message here, what we need to be doing and embracing the technology, using it so we can do more effectively. Any advice for those that perhaps are looking to start out in this journey, that are perhaps a little behind? What should people be doing to catch up or to do as Alejandro was saying?
First, I'll say, I think Alejandro almost took the words right out of my mouth. I agree very much on some of the key points mentioned. And I do want to say first, though, that, you know, looking at 2024 in isolation, or how we go into 2025 in isolation, it's really, to me, about this whole decade. The shift in the pace of change and the types of changes we've seen started in 2020. Obviously, with the pandemic then informed all of the supply chain challenges. And frankly, I think it's been an exciting time for procurement and supply chain, because it's put it on the map. Everybody knows what it is. It is definitely on the CFO agenda, on the CEO agenda. And when it comes to, you know, Alejandro was referring to the geopolitical shifts. I mean, just this week, there's been a shift in regime in Syria. How does that impact shipping lanes? Does that impact the price of oil? Maybe, maybe not. I think some things remain to be seen. And so this idea of being able to have a data-first approach that allows us then to leverage Gen AI tools or any AI technology, so that we have answers, that co-pilot notion that I was talking about. We have our co-pilot that can quickly sift through hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of data points, external sources as well as your internal data, that then can say to us, well, this just happened in Syria, building on that example, your shipping lane X, Y, and Z, you may need to look into, or this supplier may have impact, and then being able to act on it. That human in the loop, the category manager, for example, can act on it immediately, or maybe it's a seven-day plan or a 30-day plan that they need to put together. So in answer to your question about how to even get started, there are probably several parallel paths. And one is starting to get data in order. And that doesn't mean you have to do it yourself. You can leverage third-party providers, certainly, to help do that. Starting to evaluate where in your workflows efficiencies can be added through automation, hyper-automation, or Gen AI. And I think we all know there are hundreds of tools and platforms that are out there now. It really has exploded, this procure tech landscape due to PE investments and VC investments. And we spend a lot of time working with clients to help evaluate that landscape, because it's not about getting the shiniest and newest. It's about how do you enhance the workflows, right? And then building it upon a data set, a data lake that can help to drive the information faster and drive those efficiencies. So there are probably a couple parallel paths that can be taken to get started on the journey. I don't think it's about, oh, I must find something in Gen AI because that's the hype and I must do it. Mm. But I do believe there are tremendous benefits for a procurement organization when leveraged in the right way, implemented in the right way, with the right training.
Yeah. And you mentioned earlier that sort of the long term, you talk about the decade, which totally gets, and let's face it, the net zero conversations are all quite long term. I think the challenge is everyone is under pressure to deliver this fiscal year.
Yeah.
So there is that dilemma, and I'm sure Terry's under immense pressure, like many organizations are, that have the CFO providing that short-term thinking, the short-term results, and yet actually we need to balance or juggle the short-term with the long-term in order to be successful.
Yeah, maybe I'll say maybe one more comment, then Terry certainly jump in, but I think it's about business cases that do pay for themselves. So how can we structure those business cases that provide the ROI? And sometimes procurement has a higher bar of an ROI to get an investment than some other functions in the company.
I would say yes, absolutely.
So I will certainly acknowledge that. But the other point I just wanted to make is when I'm thinking about the next 5 years or even the decade beyond, the perspective that I'm coming from, and I think all of us know, is 18 months ago, I don't even think Sam Altman could have predicted where ChatGPT, OpenAI, and Gen AI has come to as we sit here today. And so we all don't know what's going to be happening 18 months from now. But I think what I do know, or what we all do know, is it is going to be advancing at turbo speed, at hyper speed. And so this notion of agentic AI, having an agent that is truly thinking as a human and doing the work as a human. There were 2 articles in the last 3 weeks from Sam Altman, who says, yeah, it's coming in 2025. And then another from Bloomberg that said, oh, we're not going to see that for another 5 years. The reality is somewhere in between. And so that's why I say we have to be thinking about it, because these are truly technologies that will be tremendously helpful to all organizations. So being at least slightly ahead of the curve in the thinking about it, evaluating those tools and technologies, and then understanding what can potentially work within your organization, I think is important to be prepared for those next 5 years.
Excellent. Thank you. Terry, your view on, again, the crystal ball going forward, where do you share some of the challenges?
I think that, again, for us, it's about that execution. And more importantly, and someone had a question in the chat about what are we doing in it from an innovation standpoint to save money. I think there's the normal answers people will give around, at least in my world: automation, sensors. I own facilities, so sensors, how many people are coming into the office, how often does, bathrooms need to be cleaned, robotics, all of that. And that's all good, right? But honestly, the thing that I've been focusing on now is that I'm talking to my suppliers and I'll say, you tell me where am I wasting money?
Right.
They have the advantage of having other clients. I only know my world, right? I live in my world. I only know my world. But they see different viewpoints. And so for me, it's been eye-opening to say, this is a safe environment. You tell me what we're doing that is providing waste into the system. I think that's paramount, from a process perspective. And then also I challenge them as I own, construction. How can we get more efficient, or how can you value engineer? Just because our spec says this, is there something that we could be doing differently? So to me, that moving forward, it's around executing to the ideas, getting the support to make those types of initiatives happen. And honestly, being open enough to listen to that feedback from the suppliers and make those changes.
Very sensible advice there. Listen, don't just do all the talking. So yeah, very sensible. Alejandra, anything else on your list of the challenges for 25 and beyond?
Yeah, thank you for that. And to me, the priority will be the focus and the balance between the short-term cost savings and the long-term value creation, and how people, the talent, the stakeholders, our suppliers will play a role into that. And as we have shifting priorities also with the business, right? How we need to adapt our procurement strategy, our sourcing strategy, and our talent strategy to address those challenges. And I truly believe that procurement is no longer about just cost savings, it's about the reduction of waste across our supply chain. It really needs to be a holistic end-to-end view of where there's waste, and then how procurement, in collaboration with our stakeholders, with other functions, we can reduce that. And Terry already shared one example, talking to suppliers, where is my inefficiency creating cost for you, right? Where is my process creating cost for you? And the supplier will pass it to us. We cannot be naive here, right? But also with our stakeholders of how our process makes you buy outside of the policy, outside of our catalogs, different specifications, right? So we need to be more effective in this term to deliver more value to the company. And of course, we will have the normal cost savings. This is part of our job description and what the company expects us to do. But I think we need to go above and beyond that line. And let me build on one question I see in the chat on how we can identify quick wins for companies looking to leverage AI in procurement, right? My example, and first, please check with your compliance or IT team of what you can do and share or put in ChatGPT or any of these tools, right? But one example is, ask ChatGPT, I'm doing this RFP. This is the supplier, this is the category. What's your feedback? What I'm missing here? Or I'm reviewing this contract, right? Where should I pay more attention? So this is not a big investment. It's not super sophisticated. There are prompts that you can learn to start doing this, to familiarize with the tool and create a lot of value for you and augment your capability quite easily, right? So my invitation to everybody would be, try it. Just try, be cautious what you share, right? Especially if it's in an open platform, but just try it. Run a pilot with your colleagues, with your team, with your boss, etc. One process and see how it goes. And on that, you can start building your business case.
Excellent. Well, I love the very clear message that you're giving to everyone, and I totally agree. I think use it for personal productivity. Get used to writing those prompts and tune into that mindset, because it's going to come at some point, and then you want to be ready. So thank you for that that guidance. Any final comments, Mita, from you before I wrap up?
No, but I did want to double click on what Alejandra, or yes, I do, but I want to double click on what Alejandra said first. which is, yeah, doing even your own personal learning. There's so many AI classes online, whether it is 30 minutes or whether it is one day. I actually took one earlier this year to learn prompt engineering, and we created our own chatbot. If anybody knows me, that's not what I certainly know or focus my time on, but just starting to learn, what do we mean by prompts, or what makes a good prompt? That is maybe even 50% of the battle when it comes to Gen AI, and really understanding how to use ChatGPT or these many other capabilities that are out there. But I think in closing, and through this discussion, what we're learning certainly is that procurement does not stand still. It cannot stand still. And one of the key drivers to help build the agility and resilience to support this notion that we're not standing still is taking a digital first mindset related to data and the other things we've spoken about. But that digital first mindset is with a HI, or a human-centric approach, right? So leveraging these tools as co-pilots to drive your efficiency or to drive your automation. And my final thought, and this is actually my team came up with this, but I like it as a mantra, if you will. But thinking about how do we leverage these digital enablers, the smallest ones to the more complex ones, to take us from being diagnostic and descriptive to predictive and prescriptive.
Oh, very nice. That takes some thinking, but that is a really good one, Mita. Thank you. So over the last sort of 55 minutes or so, we've given you the insights as to what's been going on and what will be happening. And there's definitely some sort of key themes. And I think the clear instruction from the panelists is you've got to spend time with your stakeholders. You can't work off as a tangent. Work with your stakeholders, understand what their business requirements are, and really align what you're doing. Become more business-like. Alejandra, you said that, and I've heard it a number of times. Procurement, we've got to be more business-like, working to support the business, not just our own function, our own objectives. Of course, cost is top of the list, but it needn't be everything that you focus on. And balancing the ESG, balancing the regulations is becoming even more important. So I think we're in for a busy time. We're not going to have a quiet time next year. We've heard about being agile, being flexible, training the team, but some very clear messages. So whether it's ESG or whether it's AI, you've got to do something. And I think as we end the year, you've got to set those goals, set yourself those challenges. So whether it is, like Mita said, go on a prompt engineering course to really learn how to do it, or perhaps it's a scope 3 piece of work that you need to develop. But definitely do something, don't ignore it, and then share that with your stakeholders. Let them know what you're doing. Let them know how agile and flexible that you can be. And as Terry was saying, have those conversations with suppliers to eliminate waste and make all that you are doing more efficient. I'm hoping that has given you something to think about, something that you can then implement in your organization over the next coming months. All it leaves me to say now is to thank the panel for their very genuine and honest contributions. So Terry and Alejandra and Mita, thank you so much for sharing over this last hour, and wish everyone a very happy Christmas, holidays and New Year, and look forward to further webinars in 2025. So until then, thank you all and goodbye for now.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you
so much.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Happy holidays.